Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Saturnalia, whatever floats your boat. We are getting down to the wire. So first things first, as I said, I hope everyone's doing well. And you're ready for some Computer America. So today on the program, we have none other than Mr. Ralph Bond. He is our science and tech trends correspondent, and we will be doing everything and anything having to do with, well, science and tech. And, he has a bunch of stories lined up. It's going to be a really fun time, and looking forward to it. And I guess the second thing that I really want to mention is computeramerica.com. That's where you will find everything after the program. We'll put up show notes, and Ralph puts a lot of work into finding these stories and putting them all in one easy to find document. And so if you want to go back, check some of these out, or as is likely the case, catch some of the stories that we won't be able to get to, you can find them there at computeramerica.com, as well as a link to our guest website and more. So let's see. In the meantime, I don't really think there's anything. Oh, one thing I want to announce: Computer America, as is traditional, every year at the end of the year, Computer America goes on break. And as it turns out, just works out that our last show of the year is going to be December 21st. I know we caught it on a weekend; it's early, but December 21st will be our last show of the year, and then we will be back at it bright and early, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, January 2nd, where we hope to, really have another great year, kick it off right, and, we'll be swept up in CES Bonanza. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll kick the year off right, and hey, hopefully you can join us. But in the meantime, just want to let you know why there's so many, best of reruns, things like that, on those 2 weeks, and it's because, hey, we're on break. So I think that's just about it. Why don't we go ahead, bring on our guest, and we'll get started. So, as I said before, joining us on the show, he's a regular, longtime correspondent, and very, very happy to have him here. And it's none other than Ralph Bond. So, Ralph, welcome back onto Computer America.
Hey, okay, it's great to be with you. Yes, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas, and don't forget Jerry Seinfeld's Festivus for the rest of us. Remember that?
Yeah. I absolutely do. Yeah. So, and obviously, I know that, honestly, I have yet to meet one person who's been offended by Merry Christmas. I've yet to meet one person who's offended by Happy Holiday. Like, I really think as long as the meaning behind your words are, I hope you do well in the near future, like, I think people are okay with it. So, whatever it happens, I hope that you're all going to go into this well. And for anyone out there watching the video portion, which you can find at twitch.tv/Computer America or computeramerica.com, you can catch Ralph, and you can catch Ralph's new assistant, who looks very qualified for the season.
Mr. Snowman with a sparkly tummy.
I see that. And wait, is he actually changing colors?
Yes, this is quite groovy. Check it out.
It's like a snow. It's like a snow globe on steroids.
A snow globe. Yes.
Yeah.
My wife got this for me because she knows I'm a sucker for silly stuff like this. And he's wearing the same kind of hat. I'm wearing a Santa's Helper's hat. So we are in the Festivus for the rest of us, whatever floats your boat, as you say, holiday mode here today.
Absolutely. And of course, everyone, you definitely want to check us out. And also with the video, you can follow along with the show notes, but I'll leave it to Ralph to really explain the purpose of why you go through all the effort to put this together, and what is it?
Well, yeah. So what I like to do, and if you've been a long-time listener of the show, you know what I do. I go out and I look for fun technology and science advancement stories. So these are not necessarily specifically tied to computers or directly to personal computers, but rather a large, broad kind of range of stories, things that catch my eye. And what I do is I go out there and I capture these stories and capture the images and the links and so forth and put them in what we call the show notes or the cheat notes document, which you can get through the show's website, as Ben mentioned at the outset here. Please do that, because you'll have the links, you'll have the images, and then also, most important of all, very rarely do we get through all the stories I put together each month. So by having the show notes, you can pick up where we left off, revisit stories, or read the ones and look at the links that you didn't get a chance to do on the show today.
Yep, and like I was saying, Ralph, before the show, we're going to try to work more videos in the future. But a lot of the stories that because we just don't want to play other people's videos on our show as if we were trying to steal it. A lot of these stories have videos that you can go check out as well to see the stuff in action, because that's the fun part about tech. Just like Ralph Snowman, seeing it work is way better than just hearing how it works. So, and obviously, like I said, we're probably not going to be able to get to all this, but hey, as is tradition, we can start with story number 1. So, Ralph, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, this is a good example of what I like to do and what I look for when I look for headlines and stories and so forth, which I go and I fetch. So none of this is material I wrote myself, but rather aggregating these wonderful articles. And I'm particularly fascinated in the area of science and technology and computer technology and the web and so forth, helping with healthcare issues or helping the disabled or handicapped folks. And this story is perfect right here. This comes from Engadget, a story by John Fingus. And the title is AR, which of course means augmented reality. Technology helps the blind navigate by making objects talk. Let me say that again. AR technology helps the blind navigate by making objects talk. Subtitle: you could walk through unfamiliar areas using a headset to find your way. And of course, when I saw that headline and subhead, I went, okay, I've got to find out about this. The show notes have the link and a picture of a HoloLens from Microsoft. There's a link also to a YouTube video, which I encourage you to go and check out. And Ben may be playing that in background right now. It's wonderful.
Well,
but let me get into this.
And your first thing is like, wow, that's really going to help people who are, blind, that kind of thing. But at the same time, let's actually turn that off. So yeah, we'll play the video in the background as you go through it. But like, to me, the first thing I thought was, objects are going to have like Italian accents, being like, hey, I'm existing over here. And like, just so blind people don't like walk into a car or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just in a good mood, but please go ahead. We're watching the video.
There's a lot of possibilities here. And let's state right up front, this is in its early stages, so it's not a ready-to-go-to-market kind of deal right now, but I just love the implications of this, especially when you look at augmented reality. By the way, segue just for a moment, there's virtual reality and there's augmented reality, right? So augmented reality, I want you to think of putting on your HoloLens or whatever, 3D virtual reality goggles you put on. And in the world of augmented reality, it means that you look at, let's say you look at a construction site or a room in a construction or a room in a building. And augmented reality would show you the actual room that you're in, right? But would overlay information. In the world of construction, that might be an overlay that shows you where the electrical lines are, or the plumbing, or the HVAC that's hidden behind the walls as you move your head around and look at the environment. So that's what we're talking about with augmented reality to help blind.
And also, just before we get started, I will say that we recently had a company on that is working in these fields. And I guess even the insiders in the field have gotten to the point where they're like, we're tired of saying all these. I wouldn't be surprised if it catches on because it's already in use in the industry, but they call it XR, where X being a variable, it could be anything you want. So it'd be augmented, virtual, mixed, any kind of reality. It's going to be XR is just all.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why not? And a good example of that kind of mixture would be, again, I'll go back to the construction example. Say you're at a building site, and let's say that building site is halfway completed. Let's say it's a high-rise, and you're on floor 11 or something, right? In a mixed situation, you would have the actual environment shown through your goggles as it is, what you're really seeing in front of you, literally, maybe with augmented overlays and even more overlays or virtual reality, if you want to call it that, like a game, to show you what the final thing would look like. So you could see progress and interim stages and then final all mixed in with what you're actually seeing in reality in front of you. So it's such a great field. I love it. I think there's the potential here is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so please go ahead with the story.
Well, now, with all that said, let's get into the story here. It says, if you're blind, finding your way through a new area can sometimes be challenging. Well, of course. In the future, though, you might just need to wear a headset. Caltech, now that's California Institute of Technology, they're based in Pasadena, California. So Caltech researchers have developed a cognitive augmented reality assistant. Of course, it has an acronym, CARA, that uses Microsoft's HoloLens to make objects talk to you. Now, in order for this to make sense or for it to come alive for you, you need to look at that video that's embedded in the link embedded in our show notes. Then you'll go, oh, okay, I get it. So CARA, or the Cognitive Augmented Reality Assistant, uses computer vision to identify objects in a given space and say their names. Thanks to spatialized sound, you'll know if there's a chair in front of you or a door to your right. The closer you are to the object in question, the higher the pitch of the object's quote-unquote voice. So you have to, if you're not looking at the video, it might be a little hard to imagine this, but it'll sink in again if you look at that video. Going on, it says, go ahead, Dan.
And by the way, we're of course watching the video and just seeing this really, because when it comes to augmented reality, you think of it as, maybe something that is only for the one person wearing it, but obviously through cameras and, you can see what the person wearing the goggles is seeing. It's crazy to really see, like all the meshes and all the, all the computer vision that's going on to, I guess, identify for blind people. It's you're right. It's definitely a striking visual.
Yeah, it is. And of course, needless to say, the amount of compute power needed to do something like this is just spectacular. Mm-hmm. And my dog is starting to have a nightmare, and I'm going to shake her so she doesn't make any more squealing sounds. My little rescue dog still has nightmares.
Helper. I hear you.
Yes. Anyway, so going on, it says, this could quickly become overwhelming. So the team created a trio of modes. This is really interesting. The most intuitive option, Spotlight mode, has objects speak their names only when you're looking at them. If you'd rather get a sense of what the room is like before moving, a Scan mode will name everything in view of the HoloLens's camera. And if you have somewhere specific to be, a Target mode lets you focus on just one object. Let's say like a staircase, for example, that you're trying to find the stairway to get up to the next level, let's say, or the elevator or whatever the object may be. The technology is very young and not particularly accessible when it requires an expensive AR headpiece. Early results are promising, at least. Scientists conducted successful tests where blind volunteers found their way through a Caltech building using cognitive augmented reality assistant to tell them where to turn, where the stairs were, and even when there were handrails. So cool. In the long term, the goal is to make cognitive augmented reality assistant equipped headsets useful in many places. You could visit a store for the first time and navigate the aisles as if you were a regular. So this is a story of technology trend and promise, not a deliverable today, but applause to Caltech for thinking about this. And as the video so well talks about, these technologies weren't developed originally with this in mind, but smart people are figuring out ways to use it, just like Ben, you and I have talked for years about how the smartphone, whether it's an Android or not, it doesn't matter. You see, we put this technology into the hands of the world, and look at all the millions of different creative uses. Well, you put these AR and VR headsets out into the world, and look at the spin-offs, and this, I think, is just a wonderful example of that.
One of the greatest democratizations of technology was Microsoft Xbox's Kinect, when they had development kits when any small lab in any community college, any college out there, any university, they could buy these things en masse and get a maybe not the best, but at least a good enough piece of technology that let them start to do, work in fields that they couldn't before. Same thing with, you're right, with these goggles and things like that. Although I do take exception with one part of the line. I definitely like John Fangus and his writing. He puts out 7 or 8 articles a day. I don't know how he does it. He's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it either.
But I will say that this, I do take exception of one thing where he says that early results are promising. I'm sorry, actually, the technology is very young and not particularly accessible when it requires expensive AR headpiece. I mean, let's see, on the show, we've had hearing aid companies, we've had others that work in other medical fields. Like, when you talk about medical devices, don't get me wrong, $10, $20 medical devices, I wish everyone had access to this. But when you're talking about expense, when it comes to vision impaired and what the insurance companies might actually cover if this were a working product, I don't think that a $600 headset's really out of the question for something that could do what this is promising.
You raise a really good point. I'll make this a personal example. Among my many DNA defective qualities includes severe sleep apnea. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I use it as an excuse. My doctor finally said, dude, you go offline breathing-wise for a long period of time. This could be causing or may have already caused brain damage. So, guys, if you have sleep apnea, you can use this as an excuse to explain to your wife why you forget things or don't remember or don't hear what she's saying, don't process it right. Use the brain damage thing, which I do. But the point I'm making about, and to your point about cost of medical equipment, my CPAP machine, which is basically a fancy-dancy, it has computer technology, but it's an air pump. I mean, come on, guys. With a humidifier, with a little, water unit. Fine. I mean, it's cool. The thing's over $1,000. What? I mean, come on. And so your point's well made about medical equipment.
Completely. And actually, this is not having to do with this, but it's actually something that you just mentioned. There was a story that went around maybe a week or two ago. I know that we covered it on the air. I can't exactly remember the exact day, but you said CPAP machine. There are now smart CPAP machines. I don't know if you've seen these things, but they connect to the internet and they share information with your doctor, so your doctor can see, if it's working well, if you need changes, things like that. That's the quote unquote hope of the idea of a connected machine like that. What is actually happening? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my CPAP machine does have an SD card in it. And it's giving a complete record. So when I go in twice a year to my sleep therapist, medical person, she can pull that SD card out and say, oh, okay, I see that you've been a good boy. You've used it every night. But you're not getting enough hours of sleep. I mean, there's all kinds of analytics, but it's not real time. And it's not communicating as you described. So I think that idea is really cool for CPAP folks.
Yeah. And the big thing with that one is that, unfortunately, insurance companies, because they have to be the go-between between patients and medicine for some weird reason, they are actually hitting people saying that, hey, we noticed that you only use your CPAP machine for about 2 hours a night, or you're using it only. The insurance company is saying you are not using your device enough, so we're not going to pay for it. And and that I think is fair in that case. You really think so? That seems so weird to me that someone could be diagnosed and the doctor says you need this, but then the insurance company says, oh, it turns out that your doctor's wrong and we're not going to pay for this. If
the diagnosis is in question, that's one thing. But if the patient's not using it, then I think it's legitimate to say, dude, you're not using this thing. We're not going to pay for it. There's where I draw the distinction. However, if the insurance company is arguing with the physician about whether the sleep apnea is a legit diagnosis, that's another topic.
And that's what's happening. But you're right. That's certainly is another topic, and we covered that one. That was very weird. Just hearing how smart technology is kind of being used against people. But I digress. We're here. So that's story number one.
And Ben, this is why we never get through all the stories. I love it, though. I love our conversations. It's okay.
For sure.
That's why people go to the show notes.
Absolutely. And by the way, in the chat room, Mom Chipmunk says, nice Santa hat. So you're already getting those reviews. So
old one.
Yeah, so I will say, and by the way, don't think I don't notice you are upgrading the show notes with nice little banners instead of the the sideways slant. So I like to see that.
Snippet of that artwork and thought, well, that's a lot more attractive.
I like it.
Anyway, on to story 2.
Absolutely.
Okay, popular science. Popular science, of course, wonderful. Story by Rob Verger, and the headline is, I love these kind of headlines. Smart foam and artificial intelligence could help robots know if they're injured. What? You gotta love it. I mean, how could you resist a headline like that, right? Anyway, there's a cool image here. Let's get into this story. This foam creation can figure out what's happening to it. Now, you need the image to have this in context. Okay, you can see the little experimental lab instrument here. Light fibers in the silicone foam allow an AI system to detect how it's being manipulated. If you fall hard and break your arm, your body will let you know with crackling hot speed that something is wrong. Robots, though, don't have neurons, so need a method to know what's going on with their artificial bodies, right? And this is interesting to me personally because I hadn't really thought about this a lot. How can you give a robotic device the ability to know, oh, I just lost a hand, or, oh, my foot just got crushed, right? Anyway, consider a future where a robot operates autonomously, but an appendage becomes injured, says Robert Shepard, an associate professor of mechanical engineering at Cornell University. And here's a quote from him. It's going to continue moving its limb and thinking its hand or foot is going to be in one position when it's actually going to be in a different position, he says. We need skins or internal neural-like sensors to communicate this information three-dimensionally and continuously to the robot's controller. These guys they talk about the challenge here. This is pretty interesting. Goes on to say, Shepard's lab is developing a foam, light, and artificial intelligence system that allows it to sense what's happening to it, whether the foam is bending up or down, or twisting, or both. The results were published today. The story, by the way, was posted on 29 November. The results were published today in the journal Science Robotics. And it gets deeper here. It says, here is how it works. The key sensor is a layer of 30 optical fibers in the foam, 30, which is made of silicone. The fibers stick out of one end of the foam and connect to other equipment. Again, the illustrations in the article make this understandable. The intensity of the light coming out of the end of those optical fibers lets the system know what's happening to the foam. When the foam is at rest, the light looks a certain way. If the foam bends or twists, the light changes. Another quote here, so you can detect changes in shape by looking at the change in the overall pattern of light intensity, says Ilse Van Merbeek, I hope I'm saying that right, a PhD candidate in mechanical engineering at Cornell, and the first author of the paper describing the foam. Humans obviously have brains to interpret what's going on with their bodies, but this foam has no noggin. For that job, the researchers turned to artificial intelligence. To build the AI, the researchers first gathered information how the light from the fibers changed when the foam was bent or twisted in a known way. That data let them train the machine learning models that they could use going forward to interpret what's happening with the foam. And there's an illustration of the whole setup here, the experimental setup.
I don't understand that illustration one bit, but...
Well, there's the foam assembly. Now we're looking at where it says the whole experiment setup, the foam assembly and the optic fibers, and it's going into a whole array of devices that help interpret what's going on with the shape and bend and twist. I think what my guess is, if I segue just for a moment, my assumption is what they did is a whole bunch of things to train the system as to what would be a normal movement for the appendage or objects in question. Mm-hmm. And that way, when the movement goes outside of the range of what's normal, then it's would make the conclusion, oh, something's wrong or it's broken or it's something like that. I mean,
Makes sense.
I'm a layperson's interpretation here. It goes on to say this isn't the only sensing strategy out there that researchers can use to see how a soft robotic creation is stretching. Flexible electronic sensors use a change in current to notice how they're stretching, while previous work in Shepard's lab has used stretchable light fibers to measure whether something has become deformed. You see, that's the point, deformed, outside of the normal range of movement that the appendage in question and the robot is expected to do, right? Those are my comments, not in the article. And then it goes on to say, of course, sensors like these are crucial for the robot to know what's going on with it and around it. Quote, your robot needs to have a sense of itself in the world. Well, that's kind of poetic. Shepard, who is the senior author of the new paper, says, right now, the foam and AI experimental setup at Cornell involves gear that's external to the foam. That's what's in the image, the picture. But Vandermeek says that it would be possible to miniaturize everything with the goal of having a self-contained, self-sensing foam setup. And it concludes, one possible application she sees for this kind of sensor system, robots learning how to walk for themselves. She says, referring to soft bots, quote, it has to be able to sense its shape. I just thought there's a lot of, to me again personally, when you think about robotics, I hadn't really thought about this aspect. We think of these humanoid-like robots or the robots that are like dogs. But right. What happens if they lose a foot? Or what happens if something gets whacked off? Or they're maybe going into a hazardous environment and an appendage is damaged? How does the robot know and understand that?
It would be super helpful, I would bet, for a mechanical engineer if you could put these kinds of sensors into a robot, and let's say it performs a very strenuous activity and something snaps or something goes wrong, being able to for the robot to say to itself, I quote unquote I broke my arm, and instead of trying to perform the same mechanical action, it shuts it down or stops it and says, maintenance needs to come out here and take a look at this because my this arm bent the wrong way. And instead of further damaging the equipment, they could it could be caught very early, and it could be a very simple fix as opposed to a very costly one. Very, very cool. You're right. I never thought about a robot having a sense of itself.
Well, I'll see you and raise you on the AI part of what you were just talking about. Not only everything you just said, but what if? What if this soft robot, this robotic device with this intelligent foam that understands it's moving in a way that's not supposed to be normal, could be, I call it the three-legged dog scenario. Meaning, let's think about those robots that look like dogs. What is it, Boston? What's the name of that?
Boston Dynamics.
Thank you, Boston. So let's think about the Boston Dynamics robotic dogs. Dog goes out deployed to a hazardous situation or whatever. A leg gets blown off. It goes, oh, I've lost my leg. Oh, AI goes, let me compensate. Let me figure out. Okay, now I'll keep going. Three-legged dog, right? So that's another aspect of this that I think could be potentially amazingly interesting.
Right, and of course, with the thought fresh in our mind about dogs losing legs, let's go ahead, skip on over to story number 3. And by the way, Ralph, we are about a minute here from break. Although with I was talking about earlier with some of the changes behind the scenes, you'll be able to hear it, so I don't have to interrupt you. So
where do you want to go?
So listen for the music here. But story number 3 works perfectly fine for me, and this is. This is interesting to me because, let's see, story number 3, and I'm going to read the title for you. Natural gas firms have a proposal to convert home heating to hydrogen. And 3 companies want to test out a pilot project in northern England by 2028. Hydrogen, that's come up before, but as a source of fuel, not so much a source for heating. So this is interesting because it's blending technology we've heard of, maybe in a new way, though.
Yes, exactly right. And as soon as we get past the break, we can get started here. But it's a really rich story.
Yeah.
This comes from Ars Technica, and I had a little typo in my show notes where it says source. I left off the S, so it's ARS, Ars Technica. Story by Megan. I'll pronounce it Guess. I presume that's how it's pronounced. And again, as Ben noted, the headline talks about.
Actually, I'm actually going to try to correct you on that one. Megan Goose. I'm betting it's Goose because it's Seuss, but with a G. So Megan Goose.
Okay. I like it.
We can help with that. And Ralph, you're right. We're about 45 seconds away from the break, so we'll just stop right there. Everyone, you are listening to Computer America. And by the way, just got some good news in the chat room. Our contest has been on hold for a little bit, but hopefully everything works out. Logitech will be changing up prizes. And yes, hey, Snowman waving goodbye to everyone for the break. But here shortly, probably within the next week or two, or by the time we come back from the holiday season, we'll have new gifts for you, all brought to you by, of course, Logitech. Everyone, music playing in the background, which should happen right there. Although, super quiet. I need to figure out how to turn that up. So, there we go. Music. Everyone, we'll be right back. More science and tech trends with Ralph Bond. More show notes, everything. Everyone, stay tuned. More Computer America right after this.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And we continue on, Ralph Bond, and of course, Science and Tech Trends. If you missed any part of today's show, please check out the show notes, computeramerica.com, or over at Ralph's site, which we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. But Ralph Bond Wix, search that up, and you will find it. It's the first one right there. So also, wherever podcasts are heard, Computer America, pop that in, and Outpop will be today's show and all of our other shows, wherever podcasts are heard. So, Ralph, thank you for continuing on. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into story number 3, which again is turning hydrogen into a potential heat source. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, and you'll find out as we go deeper in the story, and there's more.
There always is.
So again, this is a story from Ars Technica. Megan Goose, Geuss. Okay, we'll go with that. Title again is Natural Gas Firms Have a Proposal to Convert Home Heating to Hydrogen. 3 companies, now this is in the United Kingdom, by the way, 3 companies want to test out a pilot project in northern England by 2028. So let's get into this. This is a fun story. 3 natural gas distributors issued a report this week. The story was posted late November 25, detailing plans to convert the UK's residential gas system to a hydrogen delivery system. Wow, that's ambitious. UK firms Northern Gas Networks and Cadent, as well as Norwegian gas firm Equinor, wrote the proposal that wrote in the proposal that it's technically feasible. They also suggested an initial rollout of the program to 3.7 million homes and 400,000 businesses in northern England could commence as soon as 2028. Very ambitious, as you can see. There's a quote here: "This project could represent the foundations of a deliverable, large-scale, deep decarbonization of heat policy for the UK government," the gas firm's report reads. The plan calls for the conversion of residential natural gas pipes to higher pressure pipes that can move hydrogen gas. Now, this is my personal segue for a second. How the heck do you do that with all that embedded infrastructure and so forth? That part I would like to know.
Well, and this is just drawn from personal experience, but we recently fixed up a house. It was a pain in the neck, and one of the parts is that I guess the house was originally built in the 40s or 50s, and in that area they had smaller pipes as opposed to larger ones. Yep. But so you had two options. One was to dig up the foundation of your house, get all the pipes underneath, replace them all. Obviously, you might as well just tear the whole stupid thing down and start over again. Obviously, we didn't go with that. One of the other options, and this was pretty interesting, I guess they send some kind of tubing down, and it has this, think of it like a sausage casing kind of deal, except instead of pumping sausages through it, it had this like rubberized rubber plastic kind of coating that it would extrude out as it went down your pipe, and it would coat the pipes with plastic rubber kind of deal, and it would sure up the pipe. So because if they're crumbling or falling apart, it would seal them, it would make them more durable, and it was fairly thin. It was so it wouldn't constrict the width of the pipe too much, but it would make everything a lot more sturdy. Yeah. I'm not saying that a solution like that would be perfect, but being able to coat the inside, maybe that might help.
Exactly. I think something like that would make it seem feasible, right? Yeah. As opposed to ripping out pipes or bypassing pipes. A lot of people in plumbing, my daughter and son-in-law's house was built in 1948. It had galvanized plumbing pipes, which corrode inside over many decades, just like the arteries. Yeah. Right, like arteries in the human body, they get clogged up and constricted and so forth. So they bypassed all of that. They didn't rip it out. They just bypassed all of that new PEX stuff, that flexible tubing stuff that's unbelievably durable. Blah 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 blah. So who knows how they're going to do this? But let's back into the story. So it says the plan calls for the conversion of residential natural gas pipes to higher pressure pipes that can move hydrogen gas. Although hydrogen gas tends to be flammable at a wider range of temperatures than natural gas, the report states that, quote, a 100% hydrogen gas grid represents an acceptable risk compared to the current natural gas grid. That's interesting.
I like how they say that there's a higher chance of it catching fire, so it means some homes will explode, but we will take that risk that your home will explode. I guess because it's natural gas, and natural gas has been known to do that as well. I guess they're like, it's okay,
Yes. Okay. Goes on to say, this supposes that hydrogen will be synthesized at centralized facilities using methane, or as they would say, methane, reformation, outfitted with a carbon capture system that could store any excess carbon in underwater aquifers off the coast of England. Okay, this is a pretty ambitious scheme. This scheme could reduce carbon emissions from natural gas heating by 92%, according to the report. Now, according to S&P Global Platts, the project would cost, we'll just give the U.S. dollar amount, $29.2 billion and take 7 years to complete. An additional 12 million homes around England, including some in London, could be converted by 2050. For the initial build-out, the report estimates that the conversion would increase consumers' gas bills by 7%. So it's, not great to have that increase, but it's not an overwhelming, unsurmountable increase, right? The gas firms, who were behind the study, by the way, the gas firms added, in a scenario where they could build out maximum capacity, such as a gas network would also be able to fill fuel cell vehicles. Ding, ding, ding. That was
Yep.
the AMOR I was alluding to. Adding another vector of reduced carbonization to the plan. Isn't that interesting? In a press release, Northern Gas Network says that cooking and heating using natural gas contribute to 30% of the UK's carbon emissions. Wow. The UK has been more aggressive about curbing carbon emissions than the United States. In 2015, the country stated that its goal was to close all coal-fired powered plants in the country by 2025, and in 2017, the UK electrical grid had its first coal-free day. In March of this year, the country's community's secretary rejected an open-pit coal mine on climate change concerns. So it digresses a little bit at the end of the article,
Right.
but it's very ambitious, very interesting, and I love the fact of saying, well, not only for heating and cooking, but hey, you know what? If we're sending hydrogen down the line to your home, your business, we could fuel cell vehicles, right? And that's adds a new dimension of fun to it.
Yep, and for anyone out there who's not too familiar with hydrogen, very abundant in the in the universe. Actually getting it and shipping it, that's another problem because it's very the atoms are very, very small. It leaks a lot more, which is a problem. But the nice part is if it leaks, turns out it just turns into water vapor. Because it mixes with oxygen, H2O, water vapor. So it's not as bad as coal or natural gas or things like that. It's just a matter of actually doing it. And honestly, I like it when I see price tags like $29 billion, because admittedly I've never had $29 billion, but it's still more of a real number to me. It seems possible, so that's what I like to see.
It's very ambitious, very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And Ralph, I was poking through some of the other stories that we have.
Yeah.
As much as I like story number 4, to be very blunt on it, after I heard that Britain, their artificial intelligence was scanning faces and it had a success rate of about 3%, I've realized that Britain needs work on their AI, so we're not even going to acknowledge that one. Let's go to story number 5, because I grew up in South Florida, the ocean, the beaches, things like that. Huge way of life for a lot of people. Most people in the world live on a coast, and coral reefs are a big part of biodiversity when it comes to these climates. So I like good news. This is good news. Talk about story number 5.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. This one, of course, again, it's not computer technology and so forth. I get that. However, geoengineering, and we'll talk about this in a moment, does, of course, rely on computing power to help do analytics and blah, 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 like DNA or whatever. But the story's from Gizmodo, written by Brian Kahn. The headline is, let me try that again. We're now seriously considering geoengineering coral reefs to save them. Right? I think most of us know that our coral reefs around the world are a terrible threat with climate change and the heating up of the oceans and so on and so forth. So let's get into the story. Great link here, fun photo. Coral reefs are facing a crisis thanks to an ever-growing list of threats, from climate change to ocean acidification to pollution. In an effort, so it's not just climate change, it's multiple factors.
Yeah.
In an effort to stem the rising tide of damage, the National Academy of Sciences released a major report on Wednesday. This story was posted November 28, chronicling the high-tech interventions we might have to use to save coral. None of the solutions are close to ready for prime time, but the fact that the premier scientific research institution in the United States is talking about them shows the urgency of the problem. Here comes a quote. "We're losing reefs so fast," Coral Reef Watch Program Manager Mark Edkin told Earther's a publication outlet. Goes on with this quote, "It is so critical that we do everything we can to keep coral reefs alive and healthy," of course. Goes on to say there are two main avenues to save coral outlined in the report, so keep that in mind too, which was commissioned by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which itself oversees Coral Reef Watch. So these are some really good, credible organizations this is coming out of, right? Now, one level is focusing on engineering the coral themselves. GMO the coral. That's my comment. Research has been ongoing on this front for years as scientists seek to unlock the secrets of so-called supercorals that can survive in hot water that causes other corals to bleach and die, or acidic seas that dissolve reefs.
So, and of course, when they say hot water, they're not talking about coral that you can boil alive and it'll be perfectly fine. Like hot water, and it's really just how delicate these things are. Hot water can be 1.5 degrees Celsius. It really doesn't take going above, let's say, 90 degrees Fahrenheit for these things to really, over a long period, months or years before they start to die off. So it's very delicate work that they're talking about, but it's on a global scale, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, you make a good point, Ben. If you talk to an oceanographer and you say hot water, that means one thing, and to you and me, it would mean, ouch, I can't touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's going to cook my finger or whatever. It goes on to say, but the report also calls out more wild interventions, including freezing coral embryos and sperm in an effort to preserve biodiversity and thawing them out in the future, hopefully in a cooler climate. That's pretty interesting. The report notes that scientists have successfully done this with 16 species of coral, but the risks remain high that the freezing process could damage their delicate cells. Here's another one. The other avenue, this is kind of fun, to preserve coral is to somehow protect reefs themselves at a macro scale. That delves into the science fictional realm of geoengineering. Some ideas have been put forward and even tested on a small scale include pumping up cooler water from the depths of the ocean, creating artificial shades to cool surface water itself, or altering the chemistry of seawater to make it less acidic. Isn't that interesting? Pumping cooler water from up above, shading the area, which would be mechanical, that's kind of difficult, and reducing acidity. All those are very, I think the pumping up of cooler water from the lower parts of the ocean is a really interesting thing, although that's a mechanical issue that would be enormous. So I don't know, but it's interesting.
We can pump oil from the ocean floor so easily. I would think that pumping water from the ocean floor wouldn't be too hard.
A lot easier because you're not drilling into the bed. You're just pulling water that's down there with all those weirdo, spooky-looking fish and bringing it up to the surface. Yeah, make a good point. The bit about acidic and so forth, it says the latter includes natural solutions like planting seagrasses, as well as more quote-unquote out there ideas like electromechanically splitting calcium carbonate to make the ocean more alkaline. I know this is a long article, but it's kind of fun. Yeah. The National Academy's report is one of the most comprehensive synthesis of all the disparate methods that could help save reefs. A follow-up report will create resources for actually implementing some of these ideas in the real world to start to turn the coral death spiral around. And here comes the bad news. Coral reefs have declined 30 to 50% in all corners of the ocean, we're talking globally, since 1980, a period that has seen 3 global coral bleaching events driven by hot seas. And again, what does hot seas mean? It means one thing to you and me and another thing to an oceanographer. These events will only become more common as the planet warms, meaning considering these types of interventions isn't just for fun. It's literally life or death for coral, as well as the millions of people who rely on reefs for food, protection from storm surge, and their livelihoods. But the interventions are far from the only solutions needed to keep reefs around. And here comes the kind of concluding quote. This is by no means supposed to replace efforts that are occurring to reduce the level of carbon dioxide and other heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere, Eakin said. Continues his quote. It's not supposed to replace local action to protect reefs. This is what you do to repair and keep reefs alive despite. It's far cheaper and easier to deal with the threats and reduce the chances that damage will occur than it is to rebuild the ecosystem. So the researchers wanted to make this point. We're not saying, okay, now you got a free pass to pollute and do everything you want to do because we figured out a way to make super coral. No, they're saying this is a desperation move on their part to try to hang on to things, while in the meantime, ideally, the world gets it together and reduces carbon dioxide and other heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere. So, fun story, though. I thought it was very thought-provoking. And in coral reefs, friends, not just pretty, not just for people on vacation to snorkel, dive, and check out. No. These things are critical to the environment and to the seafood industry and to people, and the storm surge thing they mentioned. All these characteristics are make coral reefs very seriously important.
No, it's one of those things where the people who live around them, they know their importance.
Get it.
But the people who live inland or all over the world, they really don't care that much because, it's just a coral. It sucks that they're dying, but who cares? Great article. Glad that you pointed it out. And also, I think it does lead to something that technology is going to be playing a larger role in. And, obviously we're computers. We're not, the environment focused show, but to realize that humans do have an impact on the global environment, I think technology is going to play a huge role in affecting that to our advantage in the future. Be that causing more rain in drought-ridden places, be that helping society as a whole for more for better weather or breaking up hurricanes and things like that. I mean, technology is going to play a role in all of that. So, Ralph, as much as you let off with this isn't exactly technology, it's going to become more and more technology. So,
well, and to your point, driven by, researched by, and implemented by technology.
Yeah,
computers,
absolutely.
Probably supercomputers, all kinds of things that are going to help, all the way down to computers that are going to help design these massive pumps, if that's what they decide to do, to bring cool water from the bottom of the sea up to the surface, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So computers are there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, we're going to go ahead and move on to story number 6. I do like this one because Computer America, ever since drones have become kind of feasible for just about anyone to own, we had a drone company on that had like a $19.99 drone, or a $20 drone that actually had a camera on it.
Oh my goodness!
I'm not just talking about one that you can fly. It actually had a camera on it.
Wow.
Drones are a thing, and we're happy that we're keeping up to date with them. But we've also been keeping up to date with the FAA. They're the ones who are in charge of drones in this country. But there's not a lot of rules over worldwide like there are with airplanes and things like that.
Right. Right.
Tell us about story number 6, because this one is big.
Yeah, you're right. This, of course, caught my eye, too, as well. It comes from Engadget, a story by Chris Holt. Headline: The first global drone standards have been revealed. So that's the key, global drone standards. That's kind of interesting. As drone use grows, as drone use grows, rules and regulations remain in flux and vary among jurisdictions. Last month, now the story was posted late November, for instance, the Federal Aviation Administration granted operators of certain drones approval to fly them in controlled airspace in the United States. But the United Kingdom has an outright ban on using them within a kilometer of airports. To help establish best practices, the International Organization for Standardization has released the first draft set of global standards for drone use. The draft does suggest no-fly zones around airports and other restricted areas, along with geofencing measures to keep drones away from sensitive locations. The standards also call for drone operators to respect others' privacy and a human intervention fail-safe for all flights. The ISO additionally suggested that training, flight logging, and maintenance requirements should be in place, along with data protection rules. It says a public consultation on the standards is open until January the 21st. Of course, that would be of 2019. And they are likely to be adopted at some point in 2019. While the standards aren't formal rules and similar measures are already in use in certain locales, the ISO hopes they'll become best practices for drone manufacturers and operators across the planet. The draft set of standards was released just as the UK's Air Safety Board said about half of the air traffic incidents are drone-related. Wow. More sets of ISO drone standards will follow, which will cover technical specs, traffic control, and manufacturing quality. So, like you say, it's an interesting thing going to the first advent here of a global practices standard.
So, and this is something that people maybe don't know about technology because unless you've tried it, you don't realize that it can happen. But there are certain things, and really I'm talking about with the no-fly zones that are, kind of geofence, on printers. Ralph, I don't know if you know this, but on a flatbed scanner or something like that, if you try to scan, let's say, $100 bill in super high resolution, and then you try to print one of these on super high resolution on really fine paper, the printer won't let you print currency. It won't let you print any kind of denomination of dollar.
Interesting.
And it has to be kind of clip arty enough to get around it. That's why you don't see kids walking around at school projects with real money, real looking money. It's because you're just simply not allowed to. That's a standard set by all scanning and printing companies.
Isn't that it? I didn't know that. That's
So,
fascinating. I mean, it makes sense, but it's fascinating.
Same thing just happened with someone I was watching. They tried to they had express permission to rebroadcast an NFL broadcast. They were using a capture card, which is a piece of technology that people have. Let's say you're playing on a video game console and you want to capture that on your computer to broadcast, let's say on Twitch. There are perfectly legitimate reasons, and again, they had permission to rebroadcast the NFL. Built into the capture card is a line of code saying, hey, this looks suspiciously like a broadcast from the NFL. We're not allowed to broadcast that. And they couldn't use their own piece of technology. Even though they had permission, they were not allowed to capture television with a capture card.
Wow.
Same idea. It's just industry standards. I think those are going to have to be put in place for drones, where it's just industry standard. Everyone has the same guidelines built into them, hard-coded that, hey, we've seen what geese can do to a passenger plane. Drones, and these things can get very, very big. Let's not have drones anywhere near, maybe emergency responders, anywhere near flight, airports. I think that's going to have to become standard.
Agree. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So so there's that one. Very, very interesting. Like you said, these things are not hard coded into anything yet, but it could be the beginning. So Ralph, we have like 2 minutes left. I don't think we're gonna be able to get to the plastics. If you could, although I do. The last story number 8, I wanted to get to this, wasn't able to. I'm actually a huge fan of shogi. I don't know if you've ever played shogi before. But,
no, I have not. Chess, but not shogi.
Yeah, think of it like chess, but like Chinese chess. And I know there's like Chinese checkers. I know there's like Chinese chess, but shogi's a lot of fun. Folks, if you haven't played it, give it a try. But according to story number 8, superhuman AI triumphs playing the toughest board games. Really, I guess that article was just highlighting the fact that, even in something that we considered a very human, logic, strategy, thinking kind of game, AI is making great advancements in that area as well. So, Ralph, and I'll leave you the last word on maybe story number 8 or any other stories we didn't get to.
Sure.
If people want to find out more, which ones would you recommend?
Well, definitely would recommend read story 8 that Ben was teasing. It comes from Scientific American. It's a great story. And I think the most interesting thing about it, of course, it's kind of, in this day and age, not surprising that we've got AI systems that can play these incredibly complex games and beat human champions. And all that's kind of like, sure, of course. I mean, we kind of accept that as a matter of fact. What I think the most interesting thing about this is, in the article, you'll learn about something called reinforcement learning. The concept of a machine learning about interactive environment through trial, error, and reward. And so what you'll find out is that this AI system, this AlphaZero, taught itself. It was amazing it's a little hard to describe in words only, so I encourage you to please go back and take a look at that story and spend some time with that, because the implications of this, we're getting closer and closer to Skynet, and it scares me sometimes, but it inspires at the same time.
I've definitely seen that in practice. There are videos that actually show the process, iteration 1 versus iteration 1,000. And, you set up rules, you set up parameters, and you say, all right, no instructions, get to it, and the computer will figure it out on its own.
Yeah.
Ralph, there's music playing lowly in the background. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and let you have the last word. If people want to find out more about you, and if you want to wish everyone a happy holiday, go for it.
Yeah, well, if you want to learn more about me, as Ben said before, super easy. Point your browser to my name, Ralph Bond, and then the word Wix, W-I-X. Right away, it'll come up to my website where I have my show notes, as well, of course, go to the Computer America show for that. And also, happy holidays from my little snow buddy and me to you.
Yeah, and hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you, and of course your little buddy and your family. And Ralph, thank you for being on the Computer America show for another year, and we hope another year and more years to go.
You got it.
Yep, everyone, once again, Computer America will be on hiatus starting December 21st, and we'll be back January 2nd. And in the meantime, from Ralph, from us, from everyone here, have a great day, have a great weekend, do something fun, and catch us here for one last week next week. Everyone, be safe. Later.